There is something very unusual going on here. Now, electric unicycle, although they're called self-balancing devices, don't truly self-balance. They only do so in 2 axes, and as a result, you still need to do some of the work in keeping yourself balanced left to right. But this, the inMotion E20, is an electric unicycle that actually self-balances. And the inMotion E20 isn't really like any other electric unicycle. And this week I'm going to too quickly. And this week I'm going to ride this strange contraption and tell you why I think that despite that it's slow and under power, I think that this electric unicycle may be much more important than you would imagine. Roll intro.
Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and help spread the uni gospel.
Quick shout out to inMotion for sending me this wheel for review purposes, but as usual, opinion express is strictly my own. And check out my UC accessory site, themosfed.com, for accessories and swag. So back in the EUC Stone Age of 2018, when I first started to ride, inMotion had a similar dual wheel model called the V3. And I remember watching multiple ride review videos trying to figure out exactly what was the deal with this weird contraption.
The obvious attraction is that dual wheel configuration helped keep it upright and theoretically make it easier to learn how to ride an EUC, which is like the #1 thing that turned people off from wanting to ride one. People always tell me, oh, that looks really cool, but I don't think I can ever ride something like that.
That's impossible.
And the E20 is inMotion's answer to that question. And although it does resemble the V3 in many ways, it also runs on a pair of narrow 14-inch tire, a 450-watt motor, and a slightly larger 234-watt-hour battery pack. But it is different in one crucial way. The suggested price for the E20 is $400. Which is half the price of the original inMotion V3. $400 means that it is on par with the cheapest of electric scooters in the price range of an expensive toy rather than a serious $2,000 to $3,000 commitment that a typical electric unicycle represents.
An expensive toy, yes, but not so expensive or powerful that you would be nervous sending your kids down the street riding one.
Which I think is exactly what inMotion's counting out. A starter electric unicycle designed and priced just right for anyone who may have a casual fascination with electric unicycle but did not want to spend for a large one on something that may get them or their wallet into trouble.
And that is probably also why the inMotion E20 looked the way it does. Its soft, egg-shaped profile is a sharp departure from the typically aggressive-looking electric unicycle from companies like Veteran RB-Go. This is a wheel that even a safety-minded Catholic nun would approve. But the bit that you're probably curious about is the answer to the question, how does it actually ride?
By the way, the amount of anger and indignation I saw online when this wheel was first announced was incredible. Some of the hardcore EUC riders seems personally offended by the very existence of this wheel. Calm down and take a deep breath. inMotion hasn't swiped your manhood or ran off with your wife. And honestly, if this wheel convinces a single casual into picking up riding an electric unicycle, then I said that it has more than accomplished what it's intended for.
You are, after all, talking to the guy who started out on an IPS i5, which is even more underpowered and about as slow as this thing, and I paid more.
By the way, I also unashamedly showed up to my first EUC meet with that underpowered piece of wheel and was, of course, promptly letting the dust as soon as the ride actually started. What stayed with me was the excitement of riding that wheel and the chance to actually see the electric riding community in person. And the fact that my wheel was only marginally faster than a snail didn't really get in the way.
Which would have been no different if I was riding this instead. What is different, however, is the strange ride feel of the E20. Imagine if you're riding a squarish profile tire and and it's sort of how this wheel feels like. The radius at the side is small because of how narrow the tire are, which make it tricky to tilt it on its side in order to make a sharp turn, since you're only balancing on a sliver of contact patch.
But you actually rarely need to tilt it up on one wheel in order to make a turn. Since you're running on a pair of thin 14-inch low-pressure tire, all you need to do is sort of lean on one side and compress the inside tire a little bit, and you'll be able to make a pretty gradual wide turn. That does require that you keep your tire at a relatively low PSI. However, considering the lack of suspension of this wheel, it's probably a good idea for you to keep the tire on the softer side in order to deal with the uneven condition you may encounter on the street.
And as long as you take it slow, and you pretty much have no choice but to, since the E20 maxed out at around 10 miles per hour. It is a stable and easy to ride wheel, but for anyone who owns an electric unicycle and know how to ride one, there's absolutely no point buying one, since a traditional single wheel EUC is much more dynamic and fun to ride by comparison.
That is, unless you want an easy way to teach someone how to ride an electric unicycle. Exactly what this thing is designed for, but to test the theory on whether or not having dual wheels actually help with the beginner learning how to ride. I have an assistant today. It's Kelly. Despite her sharing equal billing on the thumbnail of this channel, she never learned how to ride an electric unicycle.
The only experience she has with PEV is a lightweight electric scooter she used to get around downtown, but she isn't particularly athletic and was never interested or even willing to give electric unicycle a try, so Kelly is as good of a subject as I can imagine. If she somehow managed to learn to ride the E20, then anyone should be able to do it. She's starting with a half moon exercise of rolling the wheel back and forth around a stationary foot to practice wheel control. Now, the most frustrating part of learning how to ride an EUC is probably at the very beginning, when a rider has yet to pick up balance and wheel control, and as a result unable to cover even a short distance in a controlled manner. But with two wheels, it definitely makes a huge difference in helping the rider stay balanced side to side. Because of its inherent stability. It also is able to absorb a lot of the panic, rend and wave shift from beginner rider.
That definitely take a good bit of frustration out of initially learning how to ride.
Because she is able to ride short distance almost immediately, I can see that the E20 is inspiring more confidence in her, to the point where she quickly starts to push away from the safety of the wall and into the open.
She's pooped. That took a lot out of her.
We call it a day shortly after that. Considering she only rode around for about 15 minutes, Kelly made great progress.
It wants more.
Next morning, Kelly took another shot at learning to ride the E20, and I can tell that she's feeling much more comfortable with the wheel. I also realized the great advantage of having a wheel that stays up instead of falling over when the rider loses balance. I lost count the number of times when a falling wheel bashed me right in the shin while I was learning. She still needs a bit more ride time, and now that she's off the wall, a helmet and a wrist guard, but the inMotion E20 did manage the difficult task of teaching her the very basic of riding an EUC and getting her over the hump of the initial hurdle of just getting on a unicycle.
The E20 maxed out at about 10 miles per hour before the tiltback kicks in, which is about the speed of someone leisurely pedaling a bicycle, and is likely not quite fast enough for the aggressive e-bike filled bike lane here in New York City.
It is tricky to tilt on one wheel to turn quickly and have a strong tendency to want to stay planted and go in a straight line, and it's not likely to be enjoyable for anyone experienced with riding a single wheel EUC.
It is plasticky and missing a trolley handle, and the pedals are slippery, and these rubber edging keep falling off and it's starting to break. But for $400, I'm willing to be quite a bit more flexible.
$100 is cheaper even than the anemic $500 BGO M10 Mini, which carries a smaller battery pack, isn't any more powerful or faster, and is likely way harder to ride because of its diminutive size and smaller tire. And it is less than half the price of the previous newbie favorite EUC, the Hsiang 14D, which is faster and more powerful, but twice the price, and again much harder to justify for something that you may not be sure you'll actually enjoy. And the E20 retains many advantages inherent to an electric unicycle. It is compact, easy to carry, allow hands-free riding, and more importantly, is fun, even for an absolute beginner. It may only deliver half of the fun compared to an average suspension-equipped EUC, but at less than a fifth of the price, I still call that a great deal. And if the choice comes down to either walking, riding an electric scooter, or this, then I think the inMotion E20 wins by a mile.
I don't know what I've been told. Music make you lose control. Work your body to the beat. Body work will set you free.
So what do you think? Is it the perfect starter wheel we all have been waiting for, or is it an awkward, underpowered toy best given out as punishment? Well, that is what the comment section below is for. And you know what? Once again, I ramble on too long and somehow managed to waste another 15 minutes of your life, but I hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to my supporter on Patreon. Please check out the link in the video description below if you enjoy and like to support my work. And as always, as much as we all love electric unicycle, the only way for us to get better wheel is to grow as a community. So tell your friend, teach them how to ride, and get them hooked. Until the next video, thank you.